So, hello, everybody. This is the Self-Worth Talks. I'm Suzanne McCall, and I'm very just interested and passionate about talking to people about their own self-worth journey and what they do to help other people in different areas, in particular, like in the professional realm. So, today I have Alyssa Gioscia here. Welcome, Alyssa. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. And we've had great conversations. And as an executive coach, I think you have so much history and experience that you can share with us. So I'm looking forward to that. I think people will get a lot out of it.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Before we start about what you're doing now, can you tell us what your story is? Like how you got where you are today? I think it's so helpful for people to know what people's stories are, like to know that
Yeah.
there's a journey.
I love that. I love that
Yeah.
question, that idea, because I think oftentimes we can see somebody, and I'm not going to put myself in this category, but at the height of their success and think it was super easy. And we don't realize there's 10 or 20 years behind it of time and effort. But probably about 10 years ago, after some life changes, I had been in a bit of a survival mode. And then I was in a bit of a just like a coast here a little bit when I kind of got back to a baseline. And another coach had asked me if the job I was doing was my dream job. And even though I enjoyed it and was good at it and was seeing some success there, I said, no, I don't think it's my dream job. But when he asked me what was, I couldn't answer that question. And it made
Mhm.
me think to myself, like, I'd love to be able to actually answer that. Like, what is my dream job? And, I know there's different trains of thought on this. Like, for example, I really love shoes and things with makeup and fashion, but I knew I didn't necessarily want to work in that. So it's like that balance of how do I find something that I really enjoy doing that isn't necessarily only driven by like the hobbies and things that I like, which can also be a direction to your dream job. But for me, I was like, I don't really know. So I went on a journey and started working with him as a coach to be able to answer more of those questions. And I was seeing success in my life and loving coaching. And I looked back on some of my different jobs that I had done. A lot of them were training and development and leadership and mentorship. And I thought, well, a lot of my historical knowledge and background is related to coaching. I just didn't know to call it that at the time.
Mm.
I'm loving the results I'm seeing and the experience of how it was shifting my life. So I decided I wanted to lean into it. So that's when I really started leaning into coaching, learning about it, got certified, and did all the things that put me on a trajectory for a new career. But it was not a huge shift for me. And I think I see that in a lot of people who did shift into coaching. It's like, oh yeah, if you look at what you've been doing, it's kind of a natural progression.
Mhm.
So that's how I got into it, and I really enjoy it.
That's so interesting. So it's interesting that you say that because, I hear a lot of people say, it's the small steps, just take one little step at a time. It's not like a big drastic thing, but like getting clearer and clearer about what you love, what you do, how
Yeah.
you want your life to be. It's just those small steps where everything just sounds like it just, for you, it came together.
It did. And it definitely, like, I know I actually, even as a coach, I'm probably not supposed to say this. I hate the where do you see yourself in 5 years question, because so much changes so rapidly. Like if you asked me even 6 months ago if I would see myself where I am today, at that point, I would have had a very different answer than where I actually am. And not good or bad, it's just very different. So I find it helpful to have that long-term vision, but to then really backtrack it to, like you said, the next one or two things, because that can feel overwhelming and out of reach, but I can take one step. Like I can send an email, right? And even
Mm,
if there's a little
mhm,
tension around sending that email, I know I can do it. And once
mhm.
that's done, it's like, okay, great. What's just that next one thing? So for me, it was deciding to do coaching and then seeing how coaching was affecting my life and then asking, what did it take for you to be a coach? It was just those smaller things. And I was watching people around me who were really learning a lot about the industry that I was in, which was in the tech world. And they were doing all this research and reading, and I was doing the same thing around coaching. And I thought, I want to do the thing that I sort of want to nerd out about, that I really love doing, because
Mm.
it's just so much fun and I want to read and learn about it. And that also helped me get some direction in how I wanted to shift what I was doing career-wise as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting that you have to follow that passion, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, and that's a good sign that you're in the right place. If it's
Yes.
if it's touching who you are as a person and what you really love. Um, so do you find that it's difficult for so you're not working in corporate anymore?
No, correct.
Can you tell us about that? Sorry, I have so many questions, but
No, that's okay. Ask away.
that's one of them.
Yes.
What
So
happened? So you're not in corporate. That's what you used to do. What do you, so how did that shift? You decided did you get laid off with your
yeah, there's a
company?
bunch
Oh,
of things that happened in there. Yes,
okay.
I did get laid off. So I had been working at the tech company I previously worked at for about 5 years. And I actually, I took an ill-advised leap of faith and quit that job without having another job. I know you're not supposed
Oh,
to do that,
there's an
but
interesting thing.
basically, yeah, don't do that. But basically, I was getting burnt out, and I was feeling that tension of I really love coaching. I don't really love this in the same way, and I want to
Mhm.
do coaching. And but I will also wanted to be in integrity for myself. So I just had a very open, honest conversation with my boss, which I knew could lead to them saying like, thank you, no, thank you. Friday can be your last day. But what ended up happening was our CEO came to me and he said, hey, if you're interested in staying, we'd love to have coaching within the organization. And I loved the company. I didn't necessarily want to leave. I just didn't want to be in the previous role that I had been in any longer. So I just really I got blessed by this amazing job, and I got to stand up coaching within the organization and then coach full time at that company. And I did that for a year and a half. And it was so much fun because I knew the people there and got to help them, work through whatever they were working through in the coaching capacity. And it created a really nice, confidential, safe space for everyone. So it brought me a lot of joy. I loved it. And then in
Mhm.
January, the company really downsized when a lot of other tech companies were doing the same. And I was a part of that. And I went back and forth for a little while because, there is something to be said for that consistent paycheck and insurance and the things that come from having a corporate job. Like I know some people who are very entrepreneurial and they kind of, I guess, poo poo on that. But there is something about that consistency and reliability that is, I don't know, for me and type A personality, I enjoyed that. And at the same time, I realized I love coaching. I really want to lean into that. And at this point, I don't want to be put in that position again where you feel secure, but you don't necessarily know. And it's business. You never know what's going to happen, and that's okay. But
Mhm.
I decided that I wanted to be fully working for myself and be able to coach. So since January, have just leaned into my private coaching practice, and it's opened some interesting opportunities. So I have private clients, opportunity for corporate retainers and different things. And I'm adjusting to what it looks like to have this more entrepreneurial, different flows of income thing. So it's been a learning curve for me, but I'm really enjoying it. And I still get to do what I love, so it's a win. But
Mhm.
and it's not for everybody, and that's okay too. But for me, we're trying it. We're seeing how it is right now.
Wow. So you got so much clearer, it sounds like, as you went about
Yeah,
what you love doing and what aspects of the job were important,
that's
the
right.
priorities for you. Do you help women? Like what's your typical private client? Like, is it professional women or what's age group, and how do you
Yeah.
help them?
Great question. So I do coach men and women. I have noticed that women tend to gravitate towards coaching with me. And I think having been in the corporate space, it helps because even though as a coach, I am not a consultant, but it can help to say, in my experience, this. So sometimes I'll say, do you mind if I give you just a consulting note for a minute, right? Like I'll step out of the coaching hat for just a sec. So it can help, but generally I'm coaching men and women between 35 and 50 plus, a lot in the professional setting. I have coached artists because I have a music degree actually as part of my background as well. So I do love working with people in the arts, and it takes a very strong mindset to work in the arts and to keep going against a lot of different odds and roadblocks and
Mhm.
things that come up. So I enjoy working with them as well. But my goal when I'm working with clients is to help them do basically what I did, which is, where do you want to go? What's going to bring you joy? Because in the corporate space, I don't want you having your alarm clock go off and you feel like you want to cry, right? I have been there many, many moons ago, not in my most recent job, but where you're like, oh, it actually hurts my soul when the alarm clock goes off. I don't want to do this job. So what is your vision? Where do you want to go? And how can we get there together? It may mean shifting your perspective on where you are. It may mean something new, right? And even if I'm coaching with a corporation, I will always ask them, you know, some people may be better off being coached out. And are you okay with that? And some people may just need some shifts in how they're relating to things, and they'll actually flourish where they are. And some people love their job, but they want to write a book, and they just need some partnership on how do I get from nothing to a completed something, right? And so we can work on those kinds of things. Someone might want to run a marathon. So it's really just, what is your vision right now, and how do we make that happen? And what's fun is that as each thing is accomplished, you expand your, we'll call it an intuitive fence, right? It's kind of like that spot that you think, if it's inside, I'm comfortable with it. If it's on the line, I could probably do it. If it's outside of that, I don't know. I can't imagine that, right? Like most people are like, I can imagine earning $50,000 more than I make, but I can't imagine earning $5 million more than I make, right? It's just so far out of our understanding. But as you push the boundary, those things become more attainable, or at least more imaginable. And then we can look at, like, what's the plan? What does it look like to hit those numbers or to attain that? So it's fun because coaching can really grow with you as an individual as your vision grows.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, what do you see as it says? I'm a therapist, and what do you see sort of, I don't know, maybe you don't have an answer to this, the differences like coaching versus therapy? When would you suggest somebody does coaching versus therapy? What's your thought about that?
I think that's a great question. I do both. I always let my clients know I have a therapist, I have a coach, multiple coaches, really, business mentors, partners. I think both are helpful and necessary. And I feel like, at least in my experience and that for my clients, they do talk about separate things, but they're basically the same freeway, just different lanes, right? So they're running parallel to each other is how I look at them. So with my coach, I'm saying, okay, I got laid off. What is my business going to look like, right? I probably need 5 additional clients to have a sustainable income that allows me to pay my bills. How do we get there? With my therapist, I'm saying, I got laid off and I have some emotions about that. Because while my coach and I will work on some of the emotions, mental and actual, like, I call them heart emotions, that would be in that conversation, we're focusing a bit more on tasks, strategy, and that side of it. And with my therapist, I'm like, can we clear some of these emotions out of the way so I can do those tasks and I'm not feeling overly sad or discouraged or whatever it might be? But it's hard to move forward strategically if your emotions are blocking you. And so I think coaching and therapy, they work very well in tandem for that reason. And then, you know, in therapy, same thing. You're talking about, okay, let's get the emotions right. How do you want to move past this? You are bringing in some points of strategy, and then you can take that with the coach and get really deep on, like, what are the actual actions you're going to take to make the strategy happen. So they really kind of do a little of this, I think.
Yeah,
but I love, what do you think about
I
the
think that's
crossover?
so interesting because I've heard so many coaches, you know, say definitely it's a whole different kind of approach. And you know, the idea of there's 3 things. There's consulting, coaching, therapy.
Yeah.
And there's such a spectrum. And I've done coaching. I mean, of course, I have a coach also, and I know my emotional world comes into play.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily go fully into that. We do
That's
more, okay, so what do you want to do about that? Like, you know, like helping me get clear about what my steps might be to help me, you know, deal with it or move forward, you know, with that bigger goal in mind. Versus therapy is more, let's just explore that, you know, let's go with that. And where did it come from? Let's try to clear it, you know.
Well, and I think what you said, where did it come from, is key, right? Like if I'm talking with someone and there are historical traumas or difficulties or emotions or familial things, that is not my area of expertise. And I am going to highly suggest they either talk about it with their therapist or find one if they don't have one, because those types of things, it's a different level of training, etc. I want you talking with somebody who is really experienced in that, right? Like in your area of expertise, that kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
think that's a big one. And, you know, sometimes I am talking to my coach about my business and that's all we do. And sometimes I say to my therapist, I had a really weird conversation with my father. Can we talk about that? Right. Like just something super random that I wouldn't bring to the coaching space, but that I do want to process from a tools and emotional standpoint with a therapist who has that type of training and background.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's
yeah.
nice to be able to, just talk about a little bit, bring yourself to the coaching
Yeah,
experience also.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, do you feel that you see women having limiting beliefs about what's possible? Do you feel like that gets in the way from them seeing what they really want?
Oh gosh, I would say that we all have limiting beliefs, certainly. I do with coaching, you can sometimes see them a little sooner, but definitely because it's all of those things. Like in my previous role, life, job, I it was very much like you kind of waited till you were tapped on the shoulder, and then if and when somebody moved up and then there was a space for you, you might be considered. It was very slow. And I just thought, this is too slow for me career wise. So, but my coach said, well, ask about this thing. And I was like, it was like a clutch your pearls moment for me. Like, I could never, like, I was so like appalled at this
Yeah.
suggestion. But then as we started
Yeah.
talking about it, it was like, well, why not? But especially as women, but everyone, we have a lot of these rules, whether they are environmental rules that are kind of placed upon us, but we can break through those as well, or the rules of engagement that we create, especially as women, with being polite and nice and kind and quiet and the space we take up and all of those things that we've kind of learned, at least in, I'd say, my generation. I think maybe younger women are breaking out of that a bit more, but for me, that was still very much the case. So, you know, for me, going into my boss's office with a job description and saying, I know this job doesn't exist, but this is what I want to be doing. And how do we make it happen, was very empowering for me, but very much out of the mold of how things worked in my corporate structure. And that may not work for everybody. That might get very much, you know, swatted down if you try it in certain environments. So it's like, okay, well, how do we maneuver in your environment? And also things like, well, I couldn't possibly send an email to that person. They're very busy. They may be busy, but you're simply making it a request. It's their responsibility to manage their schedule. So why don't we send it? Right. Like, and
I love that.
yeah. Or like if I sent that email to you, how would you react? Oh, I would be super happy to talk to you. Great. Then let's make that same request and
Yeah.
gather that that person's going to feel the same way as well, you know. So it can be even just those small things of the things we're not allowed to do or not supposed to do that can really block us from moving forward.
It sounds like, and I have this discussion with other people too. Communication is so important,
Yeah.
and feeling, and all your own issues come up when it comes to, whether you should communicate or not. And but bringing things out and just looking at it like, well, what is it that you're thinking about? And what's another way to look at that when it comes to
Right.
comfort with things like communication or asking for something?
Asking for something, yes. I think oftentimes, especially as women, we put our ask at the very bottom and we're very concerned with everyone else's comfortability, and we're not at the detriment of our own. And even for me, you know, like I said, I could have been let go at the moment of saying, hey, I cannot do this job anymore. Instead, I had a great experience. But even if I hadn't, my CEO at the time said, you know, thank you for your integrity and talking to us about it. Because a lot of people just kind of sneak out the back door. And so for me, being true and authentic to myself in that instance was a win. I know that that will not always happen, but at least I went out, regardless of anything, I went out as my authentic self and got a great answer. And even in the email, you send it, the person says no. Okay, well, it's no different than where we were before. Let's find somebody else to ask, right? Like it's
Right.
often too the perceived threat that we think, well, I might email them and they're going to be upset and what they might send me a rude email back. That's probably not going to
Maybe.
happen, but
Yeah.
we'll project that
Yeah.
that sort of worst case scenario going out. And generally speaking, that's not even the true worst case. The worst is like, it's a no, or like, we're not hiring right now, or I don't have time at the moment. Reach out to me in 3 months, or we find somebody else. So it's also the flexibility to try authentically for yourself, which creates another level of freedom and knowing of yourself. It makes it easier to do those things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the idea of knowing that if things don't work out, it's still a learning experience, and it's
That's
still okay. Or if you try something and it doesn't work, or you feel like you failed at it, it's
right.
really just a learning experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And can we take failure like out of that sort of F word bucket, right? Like I tried, it didn't work. That's okay. What did I learn? What do I want to do differently?
Right.
Right. And just like trusting for me too, like trusting myself. Like if something's really kind of just on my mind continually, I'm like, I just need to ask the question. I
Hmm.
joke sometimes with clients, like, no romantic comedy would ever exist if people just got clarity. Right. Right. So much is about like, where's the just ask the question.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but like as a coach, sometimes I'm watching the shows and I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody please just ask what they want to know. Can we
Oh
just
my
ask the
God.
question, right? But sometimes just getting clarity can
Hmm.
move you forward so extensively because now you have an answer and okay, we're doing this, we're not doing this. It's a yes, it's a no. They agree, they don't agree. There's a partnership I didn't think. Like just find out, just get clarity because it makes a big difference.
Yeah. It sounds like clarity is like the big word too, right?
Yeah.
Clarity yourself, like to even know what it is you want to do, or to know what you need. And
Mhm.
that leads to the next thing, like, then how do I get it? And
That's right.
is it okay to ask? That
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yes. And
Lots of clarity.
I think that to me is key, and that authenticity of yourself, because once you have the clarity, it's very easy to know what to ask for and how to ask it. And not doing it alone. Like you and I have both said, we have therapists, we have coaches, we have business partners. You and I even have a networking mentorship relationship, right, with each
Hmm.
other where we talk
Hmm.
about things so key. Like
Yeah.
I have been thrilled as I've leaned into my own business this year with the number of fabulous relationships that have come from networking and asking questions. And there's been a couple of times where I've asked someone, would you be up for a call? And I always know that someone might say, hey, I don't do 20-minute coffee talks because I just don't have the time. And then some
Hmm.
people who have given me an hour who I thought would say no to 20 minutes. So you
Hmm.
just never know. And so
Hmm.
that I think I have found too that the continual taking of the steps has also given me bravery to just throw it out there the next time, because I'm like, most of the time it works pretty well. Let me try it again. And so that
Yeah.
helps too.
Yeah. Well, I think we all want connection.
Yes.
So however it happens, and I think that's like with the remote world right now, you
Mhm.
have to, this is how you have to do it. You have to have those coffee conversations over
Yeah.
Zoom, right?
Yeah.
And we're afraid to ask, but in general, I think everybody wants that and needs it.
Yeah.
So I agree, ask. And the other thing is confidence you're talking about. Like,
Mhm.
how do you think people, what's your experience? Do you think there's just people who are just confident? They have no, it's always been there, or do you think it's something you have to build? What is your thought about that?
I think it can be a little bit of both. I think we probably all start out with a lot more confidence, and then as life happens, I don't know, I won't say we, but for me, as life happened, I pulled some of that back,
Mm,
whether it's disappointments or, you know, insecurities or
yeah.
things that just happened where you feel like maybe I'll be a little less of myself because it doesn't quite fit in or whatever. And then for me, as I hit certain age, it swung kind of the opposite way of like, what am I doing here? Right. Like I want to be authentic to myself and real to who I am, because that's not really getting me anywhere. But finding my
Yeah.
authentic self helped increase my confidence. Um, Making asks, taking steps, getting yeses to things build confidence. Even getting a no because I did it helps with that.
Mm,
So the
mhm.
little steps that you mentioned early on, each little step builds confidence because you prove to yourself that you did it. You get some wins along the way, you learn some things along the way, and each time it's like I can do that now because I've done it before. And that's why we keep stretching ourselves. I think the other thing, if we're sticking with the C's, is comfort and not being attached to the comfort, because there are things that are going to move you forward that are going to be very uncomfortable.
Okay.
And I know, like, when my coach, sometimes he'll say something to me like, well, why don't you do X? And I can actually feel my body go, oh, and that's how I go, well, okay, I don't want to do it, but I will, because that feeling tells me like I need to do it almost.
Yeah.
And those are the things for me that also build confidence, is that discomfort of saying I'm going to do it anyway. But the yeses build confidence, and the trusting yourself to try the next thing builds confidence, and the asks. So I think that we have it. It can maybe get sidelined, but if we do things to feed it, it grows. And
Yeah.
then, there's people like, I don't know, The Rock, who seem like they just are confident all the time about everything and nothing will stop them. And I think it's like, we can kind of channel our inner version of whoever like that we think of. Like,
Yeah.
they just seem like they have nothing but confidence and they are making it happen. And that's awesome too.
Well, and that's true. It's interesting because I do a lot of talking about imposter syndrome, and they at work, how leaders can see, if their staff has it, and how to help them. And one of the things about imposter syndrome is it's an internal experience. So you don't necessarily see the insecurities. So The Rock might have them.
Yeah, that's right. He
Yeah.
might
So you
think his
never
biceps
know.
are not big enough. Who knows?
Right.
One of the coaches that I really love, Rich Litvin, he says if you don't have imposter syndrome, you're not trying hard enough, right? Because
Oh.
his thought is to always be the least experienced person in the room, the least intelligent person, like putting yourself in situations purposely where you don't know, so that you are learning. And it's that same idea. Let's get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because yeah, if I'm the least interesting person in this room, there's a lot of really great conversations going on. And what can I learn? And who can I talk to? And who can I get to know? And how much fun to be in that room rather than counting ourselves out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I love Rich Litvin's writing, and I'm just listening to his book, one of his books right now. But yeah, and the power of relationships and connecting.
Yeah.
How that's so important. So this has been so interesting. Talking about confidence, how that builds, and how to get more clarity about who you are and what you want, and alignment, and how important that is. It sounds like you're doing really great work. And how can people find you if they are interested in getting coaching from you?
Absolutely. So my website is alyssagioscia.com, and I know Suzanne will put that in because it's not phonetic. So you can see it on Zoom there, but you can find my website. You can message me on LinkedIn. I am a public account, so you can always find me and message, but I love talking with people and learning more about what their visions are and how they're getting there. And have that trusted advisor in your life. I certainly would not be where I was right now if I did not have those people who were rooting for me, and especially reminding me of who I am when I'm having moments where I can't see it myself, which is such a big thing, because sometimes that confidence does waver and you need people to remind you. So
Yeah.
I feel very blessed by the circle around me who will remind me when needed.
Oh, I love that. Have a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. And if nothing else, that's like such an important message for people to hear.
I think that's a big takeaway, because, Suzanne, we all have dreams. We've all attended something where we take a ton of notes and then that notebook sits there and we were riled up at the moment and then nothing happens. And oftentimes we can't do it ourselves for a variety of reasons. And that is okay. Have someone or someone's walking beside you to do it, because we move much faster together.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for that, all this advice. And it was great talking with you today.
Thank you, Suzanne. I had a great time. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, I'll be seeing you around probably in the Zoom rooms.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
right, bye-bye. Oops.